Wuthering Waves 1.2 kind of got me a little bit off guard. I went into this expecting it to be a filler patch. Everyone told me, Stix, this is going to be a filler patch, meaning that the story is probably going to suck, the characters aren't going to be very relatable, very fun, very interesting, and what I ended up with was something so much more than I'd ever anticipated, and that seems to be the general sentiment amongst the entire Wuthering Waves community. They expected a very subpar product and got something that was deep, that was emotional, that was complex, that was just a lot of fun. Now, for those of you that haven't actually completed 1.2 yet, I'm going to go ahead and just include some basic footage in the background, that way I don't spoil anything for any of you. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel, hitting that little bell notification, that way you're made up to date with every single thing that I post, and I post daily. You don't want to miss out. 1.2 though, let's just jump in with one of the most important things first: performance. Performance has been optimized quite significantly. I have heard from so many people across social media that the game runs better than ever on mobile, on PC. This was a stark improvement over what they'd gotten in 1.0, what they'd gotten in 1.1. So right off the bat, we see an incredibly improved performance for the game. I never encountered any performance issues myself, but then they don't call me Stix the Stallion for nothing. Next, voice acting. Those of you that played 1.0 in English experienced how bad Yang Yang's voice was. Now this, I don't think is the fault of the voice actors. I think this was a fault of the voice direction or the voice director, because in 1.2, Yang Yang sounds like a normal human being. It's incredible. She actually feels like a normal person, a normal member of the cast. Everyone speaks at a normal pace. Everyone has a sufficient amount of feeling relative to the scene that they're in. In terms of overall content, I think this patch told the story from a new perspective. It had an entirely new approach to players and how they live the story, how the story envelops them, how they go about experiencing it, how it's divided up into parts, the actual bulk of the content, and how it's not just focused on talking to X NPC, moving to Y location, killing Z monster. Instead, this had a significant focus on a very unique form of progression. It brought back so many different characters. You got to see how they acted under these unique circumstances. I'm actually a little bit disappointed that each individual character's scenes that they were in weren't voiced. I think it would have added a lot more flair, a lot more personality, and it would have made it much more enjoyable if they were. But I understand this is just tactically side content. Half of the characters I skipped their little cutscenes for because I just don't really care about them. And I understand that you don't even really need to focus on them. You don't even really need to necessarily like recruit everyone to continue with the story, as far as I'm aware. So it makes sense. I understand why they didn't take the time to voice every character here or voice every little side activity here. But I do like that they decided to bring them in and give them purpose, involve them in this story. They were involved in the cutscenes, they were involved in the cinematics. It was beautiful. It was, the storytelling for 1.2 was so good. I thought, like many people, this was going to be, as we noted, a filler patch. It was going to be lighthearted, it was going to be fluff, there were going to be no consequences. It was just going to be, I don't know, you know, like a group of people just going to a festival and having fun. And that is so far from the reality of what 1.2 was. Again, I'm not going to go into detail because I think you guys need to experience this yourselves. It is quite different to what you expect it to be. Trust me. This patch was, and not just this patch, but also Zheja's storyline was dark. It was emotional, but at the same time, it was incredibly touching. It was very happy. It was relatable. It had a nice contrasting mix between the two. It was very balanced. And holy crap, I know people, men, women, everyone loves Shang Liao. I get it. his personality is great. His backstory is great. I like what we learned between him and his friend. I won't delve any deeper than that. Everything about him seemed fantastic. He has a good personality. He looks really good, but I think for me, the standout, the breakout character here was actually Zhezha. Not because she's like, you know, unbelievably beautiful or anything like that. I think Chong-Li is ridiculously beautiful as a character, and no character comes even remotely close to being as attractive as her. But I think Zhezha is arguably the cutest, and not in terms of attraction, but her character, her mannerisms, her personality, her charm, they all just make her into the most shy, introverted, nerdy little weirdo that I feel like all of us as gamers, especially as gacha gamers, can relate to. You literally, I swear, just go through the story, watch all her mannerisms, watch the weird things she conceptualizes in her mind. This is probably, I think Chong-Li is the best character in the game. I think her story is the most emotional story in the game, but Zhezha's Resonator's story was a very close second. There were parts of it that were boring, like the house investigation, but outside of that, the learning about her, seeing her actually play everything out, seeing her personality, her interactions with the rover, seeing the weird shit she comes up with in her head. Holy crap. Everything about her, everything about her story, everything about her relationship with you, the rover, was superb. Especially the ending, after the ending. Like once you're done with 1.2 and you get the after, like what is the equivalent of an after credit scene. Holy crap. They are selling and banking on the fan service between characters to such an egregious extent, and I freaking love it. Speaking of mannerisms, the cutscenes, the animations, the character expressions, the graphics in general, I think, for 1.2 were probably the best the entire game has to offer up until this point, and is arguably, I know there are going to be some Zenless players out there that go, no, Zenless is better, and that is perfectly fine to think that, but I think, personally, out of what I've experienced thus far, Zhezha's storyline has some of the best facial expressions, the best physical expressions of any character I have seen in a gacha game, hands down. Kudo are absolutely killing it with this game, with every single patch that comes out. This was an absolutely stellar patch. I could not stop playing it. I was incredibly excited to push through it, to experience everything, to finish it. There are tons of events coming out over the course of the 1.2 event period, or patch period. And goddamn, 1.3, if it features the Black Shores and the characters related to the Black Shores, like Camellia, I think will probably take the game to an entirely different level. Everything about this patch was a minimum 8 out of 10. At the end of the day, I think this is a very good patch. 1.1 and 1.2 have been fantastic examples of what Kudo can do, and I can't wait to see what they do with 1.3 and 1.4, especially with the Resonator stories, considering what we've seen with Jinza, what we've seen with Chong-Li, what we've seen with Zhezha, and what we're probably going to see with Shang-Liao. Overall, I think I'd give this a solid 8 out of 10. I would give it an 8.5 if it had more combat. I think the lack of combat was the only thing I had an issue with. I wanted to use Zhezha. I wanted to mess people up by beating them up with a paintbrush, but they didn't really let you. Now, that's it. That's what I thought. I thought this was a very good patch, and I'm curious if you did too. And you know what? I'm gonna do this for every single major patch that WuWa releases. Let me know if you're interested in me doing that, because I'm curious. Now, if this is not of any interest to you, absolutely no problem. I got you covered 2 different videos on screen right now. Might be more up your alley.